Kia ora koutou, no mai, haere mai, ki ngā mana whenua o te rohi nei, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Taranaki te Mauna, ko kaitohu o Artspace Aotearoa nei, ko Ruth Buchanan aho. So welcome everybody to this deep dive as part of Intimation of endless space given in a small window of time, approximately 10 minutes, with new work by Ethan Braun and Lena Groom, and a kaupapa supported by Audio Foundation, Block Journal, and Goethe Institute. I'm very pleased to be joined by composer-performers Antonia Barnett McIntosh, Ethan Braun and Samuel Holloway, who will discuss the score and perhaps other things as well, which is a really excellent way into considering our 2025 question, is language large enough? This deep dive lecture series is here to provide just that, a deeper dive into each of our exhibitions. These have always been rather one-person, straightforward monologue lectures, and this is our first deep dive in the form of a conversation, which really does reflect the inner nature of this exhibition, which was set up as an exchange between composer Ethan Braun and graphic designer Lena Groom, and is deeply engaged with mutuality. Over the months leading up to the show, Ethan, Lena, Samuel and Antonia developed an exchange around scores toward the publishing of How Does a Score Mean? A glossary that introduces many of the key concepts of the show and contexts from which the show emerges. This has been published on Block Journal, and it's available also here in our gallery as well as on our online reading room. This exchange between Ethan, Samuel and Antonia was also an active way to forge connections between the contexts of Berlin, where Ethan and Lena work, and Tamaki, where Samuel and Antonia work. So it's really great to have this conversation take place here in our whare. Before I introduce the speakers and hand over to them, a little bit of housekeeping. If you need to use wharepaku, you have to go past the clamshell, out the door and turn left. The speakers, we think it's going to be about 45 minutes of conversation. Keep your ears alive for some pop-up sound activity, and at the end of the conversation there'll be a little bit of chance for Q&A. In terms of introducing our speakers, I'm just taking a few highlights from all of their exciting repertoires. Antonia of Kaitahu and Pākehā is a composer, performer, editor and curator. Antonia has presented work widely. My highlights: Barbican, London, Spike Island and Arnolfini, Bristol, and BBC Radio 3, Here and Now, Why Music. Ethan Braun is a composer living in Berlin. Again, my picks from his CD. Red Cat LA, Swiss Institute, New York City. And in terms of Ethan's concert work, this has been performed at Carnegie Hall, New York, Los Angeles Philharmonie, and the Dutch National Opera. Samuel is a composer and educator and maintains a long-standing collaborative relationship with the collective et al. His work has been presented by leading artists and ensembles, including Clan for Wien in Vienna, the Hong Kong New Music Ensemble, as well as the NZ Trio. So please, a warm welcome to our speakers, and then over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for coming. We thought we would start with, well, thank you Ruth for the introductions and just little bits about ourselves and how we came here. And then, we will dive into some conversation. So, kia ora, I'm Antonia, composer performer, and the way in which Samuel and I came to be here is through our online journal called Blot, which is kind of creates writing and, well, we commission writing and creative responses around music, sound and performance in Aotearoa. And we've published 4 issues so far, plus this special issue that's come out just for this. So just thank you for coming, and I'll hand over to Samuel.
Kia ora, ko Samuel Holloway Takanunua. Thank you, Ruth, for the introduction. As Antonia says, I'm here with a few hats on, but one of those is as part of our blog, the Journal for Sound, Music and Performance. And it's a real pleasure to be here to have this conversation with Ethan, who I'll now hand the microphone to.
Hi, I'm Ethan. Welcome. Thanks everybody for coming. Should I say something about what at this point?
If you could talk a bit about yourself, perhaps,
right.
and then
Right.
how, let's...
Sorry, I just had like a...
I love it.
Well, my name's Ethan. I'm from what's called Los Angeles now, originally. I'm of diasporic Ashkenazic, that is East European Jews who ended up in Hollywood, like you do, not in the industry, just in the neighborhood. North Hollywood, exactly. But anyway, so it's like the desert shrub above the Pacific Ocean. That's where I'm from originally. And since 2020, I've been living in Berlin, making it my base, as much of my work was occurring in Europe, across different disciplines, with a lot of collaborations in visual arts and exhibition spaces and film, a lot of work in ballet and theater, and I mostly work as a composer, like writing music for certain ensembles. I work with the Citizen Ensemble Kaleidoscope, is the name of the group in Berlin with whom I have a very close affiliation. And how I came to come here is in fact through Ruth Buchanan, your name was just covered by a motorcycle. Ruth Buchanan, who is a dear friend and a longtime collaborator of Lena's, who is not here. She's doing some parenting work at the moment to allow me this space. And Ruth and Lena and I at some point were just having a laugh, I think, at your show in Mönchengladbach, perhaps? That's somehow where I trace this work to. I don't know where it originated from. But somehow we were just having a vibe, the three of us, about doing a show together. Neither Lena nor I are commonly presenting, or actually have ever presented a show in an exhibition space like this that is really of our own principal undertaking, let's say. So that's how we came here. I mean, Ruth took up the position here a few years ago, and almost moved into your apartment, and now here we are. A couple years later, we figured out how to make this possible. Coming to Aotearoa for me is a very rather radical experience that I lack the words for. But anyway, happily that's not the subject of this particular conversation, but I'm very eager to continue. What do you think?
Kia ora, thank you. Next, we thought it might be helpful if you speak a bit about what happened since Ruth asked you to make the show. So a bit about how the show came together, how it sits in this space. A little summary of what you think is important about it.
Well, initially, Lena and I had thought to make like a kind of copy shop or something, where we would make zines with people in the community. We wanted to bring something. We just had this idea that we wanted to bring something to make a space that was open, that was porous, certainly. We weren't really sure what shapes that would take. And then at some point, the two of us were like, why don't we just do what we do, which is, I'll make some music and Lena will make some visuals. And something that left over from the copy shop idea was this idea of an archive or of a library, or of like making public like a certain frame of intellection and intellectual work. And that was the idea for the bookmaking process. And at some point we were like, well, I have this tendency to always make too much material. And it's really great because then if something doesn't work in one place, it can go somewhere else. And sometimes it takes years for these things to find their place. And in this particular case, we just found like a certain collection of pieces, some of which I was making as like a form of creative correspondence with people, some of which I was making in response to specific historical works, like pieces that were a bit in dialogue with something. And I just collected them and I sent them to Lena. I was like, oh, what do you think of these? She's like, oh, that's great. And then she found some visual with some of the score material for, in fact, the piece in the back, which is called Cloud Study. And it started moving from there. We started realizing why doesn't Lena make the score? Usually the score seems to be the provenance of the composer. But in this case, we wanted to unpack some of these aspects of the practice. So we shifted it for her to make the score, or to make notation, or to make propositions for how notation might take place visually. And they would be in response to and in conversation with these pieces, which are grouped a bit by mood, affect, and particular ways in which they were recorded. Maybe I would stop there, and I would take a question. I love a question.